You're sitting quietly and a thought arrives. Maybe it's about something you need to do tomorrow. Maybe it's a memory from years ago, and almost immediately another thought responds to it. A comment, a judgment, a question. Before you know it, you're several turns deep into a conversation that no one else can hear. This is what thinking usually feels like. One thought calls to another. They move in pairs, in sequences, in familiar patterns. Question and answer, problem and solution. This happened, so that must follow. It's how we make sense of things, how we plan, how we remember, how we survive. But there's a kind of question that doesn't work this way. A question that doesn't want an answer. That can't have one. Not because it's too difficult, but because it was never built to be solved. In Zen practice, these are called koans, and one of the most well-known is this. What is the sound of one hand? Not one hand clapping, just one hand, alone. You hear it, and something in the mind immediately starts working, trying to picture it, trying to reason through it. Maybe you think about air movement, or vibration, or whether the question is a trick. The thinking mind does what it always does. It reaches for the other hand. Because that's what thinking is. It's relational. It moves between two things, subject and object, this and that, self and world. Thinking is the space between the back and forth, the conversation. Imagine a river, not a wild one, but a steady flow, the kind you might sit beside on a warm afternoon. The water moves in one direction, but within it there are currents, eddies, places where the flow turns back on itself, where it seems to pause or circle. If you watch closely, you can see how the water is always meeting itself, always in relation. That's thinking. A continuous meeting, one thought touching another, one idea pulling the next into view. And it works. Most of the time, it works beautifully. You think about hunger and you make food. You think about cold and you find a blanket. Thinking helps you cross the street, build a home, love another person. But thinking also has limits, and we don't often notice them because we're so used to living inside the current. We forget that the river has banks. A koan is an invitation to step out of the current, not to stop thinking forever, not to transcend the mind or escape into some other realm. Just to see what happens when the usual pattern is interrupted. What is the sound of one hand? You can't think your way to it. Not because you're not smart enough, but because the question isn't asking for more thinking. It's asking for something else. Something that doesn't live in the space between. When you sit with a koan, really sit with it, not trying to solve it, but just holding it, you start to notice how much effort the mind puts into making pairs, how it wants to complete things, how it reaches automatically for the second hand. And in that noticing, there's a kind of gap, a pause, not empty but open. This is what koans teach. Not answers, not secrets. They teach you about the shape of your own thinking, about the way you habitually move through experience, about what it feels like when that movement is gently, persistently blocked. You might sit with the koan for days, weeks, months, and the mind will offer you all kinds of things, clever interpretations, poetic images, moments of frustration or boredom or sudden excitement. All of it is thinking meeting itself again, the river finding another eddy. But sometimes, if you stay with it, something shifts. Not because you figured it out, but because you stopped trying to. Because you let the question just be there, without needing it to resolve. And in that moment, you're not in the current anymore. You're not watching it from the bank either. You're just there, present, aware, without the back and forth. One hand, not waiting for the other, not incomplete, just one hand. This isn't about becoming a Zen master or achieving some special state. It's about noticing what's already here when thinking pauses. When the conversation stops for a moment and there's just breath, just hearing, just the feeling of your body touching the chair. The koan doesn't take you somewhere else. It shows you where you already are, underneath the constant motion of thought meeting thought. It points to the awareness that's here before the question and after the answer. The awareness that doesn't need two things to know one thing. So we'll stay with this for a while, not to solve it, but to see what it reveals. Fan the sound of one hand. There is a question that has circled through Zen monasteries for centuries. What is the sound of one hand clapping? A student brings it to a teacher. The student thinks. The student offers an answer. The teacher shakes his head. Another answer comes. Another shake. The student grows quiet, then frustrated, then something else entirely. And in that shift, something begins to crack open. This is not a riddle with a clever solution hiding in the words. It is not a puzzle where the answer sits waiting to be discovered like a key under a mat. The question refuses every answer you offer because the question itself is designed to do exactly that. It is a door that opens only when you stop pushing. And most of us spend years pushing. When you first hear this question, the mind moves immediately into problem-solving mode. One hand clapping. What would that sound like? Silence. No, that is too simple. A half sound. A sound only half heard. The mind generates possibilities, each one more abstract than the last. You might think of the sound of wind, or the sound of a hand against your own body, or you might try to imagine what silence itself sounds like when it is broken by a single palm striking nothing. Each answer feels like it might be close. Each answer is met with quiet rejection. What is happening in this moment of rejection is not failure. It is the beginning of something much more interesting. The mind is bumping against its own edge. It is discovering that there are questions that cannot be answered through thinking alone, not because they are too difficult or because the answer is hidden in some obscure place, but because the very act of thinking about them creates a wall between you and what the question is actually pointing toward. Consider how you normally meet a question. Your mind hears it, recognizes it as a problem to solve, and begins generating answers. This is useful when you are asking where your keys are or how to fix a leaking faucet. But when a question refuses every answer, when it keeps returning to you, no matter what solution you offer, something different is being asked of you. Not a different answer. A different way of being with the question itself. The metaphor of the door that opens only when you stop pushing is not poetic decoration. It describes something you can feel directly. When you push on a door, you create pressure, resistance, effort. Your body tenses. Your attention narrows to the outcome you want. You are focused on the future, on getting through the door. But what if the door is not locked? What if it is simply that your pushing has created a seal, a friction that keeps it closed? The moment you release the pressure, the moment you step back and rest your hand, the door swings open on its own. Not because you stopped trying hard enough, but because trying itself was the obstacle. This is what happens when you sit with an unanswerable question. At first, you keep pushing. You keep offering answers, explanations, interpretations. Your mind is active, engaged, convinced that the next thought will be the right one. But as you sit, as you watch the question return again and again, you begin to notice something. The pushing itself is exhausting. The effort of generating answers, of defending them, of searching for better ones. All of this is a kind of friction. It is the sound of your own mind working against itself. And then, If you stay with it long enough, something shifts. You stop pushing. Not because you have given up, but because you have grown tired of the futility. And in that moment of release, a different kind of attention becomes possible. You are no longer trying to solve the question. You are simply sitting with it, holding it, letting it be present without needing to resolve it. This is where the real teaching lies. Not in any answer to the question, but in the experience of meeting a question without the urgency to solve it. In the Zen tradition, this is sometimes called the place where thinking stops and seeing begins. It is not that you have become stupid or blank. It is that your mind has released its grip on the need to produce an answer. And in that release, something becomes visible that was never visible while you were thinking. When you sit with the question, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Without trying to solve it, you might notice something unexpected. You might notice the actual sound of the room around you, the hum of the air, the distant traffic, your own breath. You might notice the sensation of your hand resting on your knee, the texture of cloth, the warmth of your own skin. You might notice the quality of silence itself, not as an absence of sound, but as a presence, a fullness. And in noticing these things, the question no longer feels like a problem. It feels like an invitation to pay attention to what is actually here. The difference between thinking about a question and being with it is not subtle once you have felt it. When you are thinking about the question, your attention is pulled away from this moment toward some imagined future where you might finally have the right answer. When you are being with the question, your attention settles into what is actually present. The breath, the body, the room. The question itself, held lightly, without the weight of needing to solve it. This is not a technique to master. It is simply what happens when you stop pushing. When you sit quietly with something that refuses to be solved, and you allow yourself to rest in that refusal. There is a question that has lived in Zen monasteries for centuries. It arrives without warning, often in the middle of ordinary work. A student is sweeping. A teacher asks, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" The question does not ask for an answer. Not really. It asks something else entirely. It asks what happens to the mind when it meets something it cannot solve. Most of us have never sat with a cone, but we know the feeling it describes. We know what it is like to reach for something that cannot be grasped. A hand trying to grab water. The tighter the grip, the more the water slips away. The palm opens, and there is nothing to hold. Close it again, and the water is gone. This is what the thinking mind does when it meets a cone. It reaches, it grasps, it tries to solve. The mind is built for this. It is built to take in information, to organize it, to find the pattern and the answer. This is useful work. The mind does it well. But a cone is not a puzzle with a solution hidden inside it. There is no answer waiting to be found, and so the mind keeps reaching. It reaches and reaches, and the water keeps slipping through. We exhaust ourselves this way, not just with cones, but with much of life. We try to think our way into understanding something that cannot be thought. We try to grasp an experience while it is still happening. We try to hold on to a moment that is already dissolving. The mind reaches and reaches, and we feel the fatigue of it. We feel the strain of trying to hold what cannot be held. There is a teaching that comes from this exhaustion. It is simple, and it takes a long time to understand. When the mind stops, the way opens by itself. Not when we force the mind to stop. Not when we command it to be still or shame it for trying, but when the mind stops on its own. when it has reached so far and so hard that it finally recognizes the reaching itself is the problem. When it lets go, not because it has found the answer, but because there is no answer to find. This is not a metaphor. This is what actually happens. The hand that has been grasping water finally opens, and in that opening something shifts. Not because we have solved anything, but because the solving itself has stopped. A Koan teaches this by refusing to be solved. The student brings an answer. The teacher says no. The student brings another. No again. Not because the answers are wrong, but because answers themselves are the wrong direction. The mind keeps reaching. The mind keeps grasping. And slowly, very slowly, it begins to recognize the futility of its own motion. This is not defeat. This is not failure. This is the mind finally seeing what it has been doing all along. When you sit with a Koan, you are not trying to be clever. You are not trying to impress anyone with insight. You are simply noticing what happens when the mind meets something it cannot solve. You notice the reaching. You notice the strain. You notice the moment when the reaching begins to feel pointless. And you stay there. You stay in that recognition. The way opens by itself. This means that once the mind stops its frantic grasping, something becomes visible that was always there, not something new. Not something that arrives from outside, but something that was obscured by the very act of reaching for it, like trying to see your own eye. The eye cannot see itself, not because the eye is hidden, but because the seeing itself is in the way. In daily life, we do this constantly. We reach for happiness and push away sadness. We reach for certainty and push away doubt. We reach for understanding and push away confusion. The hand keeps grasping. The water keeps slipping. And we never notice that the grasping itself is the problem. A Koan does not solve this. It simply shows it to you. It shows you the reaching. It shows you the futility, and then it waits. What happens when you sit quietly and notice the moment when your thinking stops on its own? Not when you force it. Not when you try to make it happen. But when you are simply aware of the times when thinking naturally ceases. When you are listening to a sound and the mind goes silent. When you are looking at something and the thought stream pauses. When you are breathing and for a moment there is no commentary, no grasping, no reaching. These moments are already happening. They are not rare. They are not special. They happen many times each day, but we usually miss them. We miss them because we are already reaching for the next thought. We are already grasping for the next thing. What if you simply noticed? What if, without any effort, you became aware of the silence that is already there? Not trying to create it, not trying to hold it, just noticing that it is happening. The hand opens. The water is not lost. It is simply no longer being grasped. And in that opening, something becomes clear. Not through thinking, not through reaching, but through the simple fact of stopping. There is something that happens before you name it. Before the word arrives, before the thought crystallizes, there is the raw fact of experience itself. A sound reaches your ear, a taste touches your tongue, a color enters your eye, and in that first moment, before language rushes in to pin it down and file it away, something true is present that the word will never quite capture. This is not a poetic idea. It is something you can notice directly if you pause long enough to look. The old teaching says the finger pointing at the moon is not the moon. A teacher might raise a hand and direct your gaze upward. The gesture is useful. It shows you where to look. But if you stare only at the finger, mistaking it for the destination, you have missed the whole point. The finger is language. The moon is direct experience 1 points. The other simply shines. When you taste water before you call it water, something extraordinary is happening. There is a coolness, a kind of weight on the tongue, a subtle mineral quality, a sensation of quenching. None of these things need the word water to exist. They are simply occurring. The moment you think the word, something shifts. The raw sensation has already begun to fade, replaced by a concept, a memory, a familiar category. The water has become an idea about water. This is not a problem in itself. Language is useful. We need it to communicate, to remember, to navigate the world together. But we have grown so accustomed to living in the layer of words and concepts that we have nearly forgotten the layer underneath. We live pointing at the finger instead of seeing the moon. We live in the thought about water instead of the taste of it. A koan is a teaching device that works precisely at this gap. The most famous one asks, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" On the surface, it makes no sense. One hand cannot clap. The question seems impossible, even absurd. But that impossibility is deliberate. The koan is not asking your thinking mind to solve a riddle. It is asking you to stop thinking in the usual way and to encounter something directly. When you sit with that question, you cannot answer it with words. Your mind will try. It will generate clever interpretations, philosophical ideas, poetic metaphors. But none of them will satisfy the question. And in that frustration, in that moment when your usual thinking cannot proceed, something else becomes possible. You might hear the actual sound of your breathing. You might notice the subtle rustling of your clothes. You might feel the texture of the ground beneath you. The question has not been answered by your mind, but it has been answered by your direct perception. This is what koans teach. They teach that there is a way of knowing that does not depend on language. That thinking, for all its usefulness, is a secondary process. It arrives after experience. It tries to capture what is already complete without it. Consider something very ordinary. You look at a chair. Your mind immediately says the word chair. You recognize it as a familiar object. You know its purpose. You might remember where you got it. But before all of that, before the word and the memory and the category, there is simply the appearance of it, a shape, colors, proportions, shadows, the raw visual fact of a chair existing in space. That appearance is not a thought. It is not a concept. It is perception itself. Most of the time, we skip right over that layer. The word arrives so quickly that we do not notice the perception underneath it. We think we are seeing the chair, but we are mostly thinking about the chair. We are living in the finger, not looking at the moon. The teaching invites a different way of attending, not a rejection of language or thinking, but a recognition of what comes first. A gentle stepping back from the constant naming and categorizing, at least for a moment, to notice what is actually here before the words arrive. This is also what happens when you sit quietly and watch your own mind. Thoughts arise. They come with words. But before the thought is fully formed, there is something else. A stirring, an impulse, a quality of attention that has not yet solidified into language. If you can notice that, you have touched something closer to the root of your own experience. You might try this with something you encounter today. Choose something familiar, a cup, a tree outside your window, a person's face. Something you have seen many times and named without hesitation. And then pause. Before you think the name, before you activate the familiar category, simply look. What is actually here? Not what do you know about it, not what is it called, but what does it appear as right now to your open attention. You do not need to do anything with what you notice. You do not need to reach a conclusion or have an insight. Simply allow the perception to be there, unnamed and unanalyzed, for as long as it remains clear. The moment the word comes back, that is fine. There is no failure in that. But you will have touched, for just a moment, the difference between the finger and the moon, between the taste of water and the thought of water, between thinking about your experience and being present to it as it actually occurs. That small gap is where the Koan points. That is the sound before any sound has been named. There is a Zen koan that asks, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" For centuries, students have brought this question into meditation halls. They sit with it. They turn it over. They wrestle with it in their minds. And for a long time, nothing resolves. The question does not yield to logic. It does not yield to imagination. It does not yield to effort. What happens in that struggle is worth noticing. The mind reaches for an answer. It grasps. It pulls. It tries to make sense of something that resists sense-making. And in that reaching, something becomes visible. Not an answer to the koan, but the structure of how we confuse ourselves every day. Most of us live inside koans without knowing it. We carry questions that cannot be solved by thinking harder. A relationship that feels unresolved. A choice between two paths, neither clearly right. A feeling that something is wrong, but we cannot name what. A sense that we are failing at something, though we do not know at what. These are not problems waiting for solutions. They are knots. And the more we pull at them, the tighter they become. The koan teaches something quiet. The tightness comes not from the knot itself, but from the pulling. When you stop pulling, something shifts. Not because you have found an answer, but because you have stopped treating the tangle as something to be solved by force. You have stepped back. You have looked at it differently. You have, in a small way, changed your relationship to the confusion itself. This is what Zen means when it says ordinary mind is the way. It does not mean that confusion is good, or that you should accept confusion as permanent. It means that the mind you have right now, confused, uncertain, reaching, is already workable. It is not broken. It does not need to be fixed before you can move forward. The confusion itself is the material. Think of a knot in a rope. If you pull the rope tight, the knot becomes rigid. The fibers lock. But if you hold the rope loosely and turn it slowly, letting the weight of the rope itself do some of the work, the knot begins to loosen. You are not forcing it open. You are changing the conditions under which it exists. The same knot, held differently, begins to unravel on its own. Your confusions work this way too. The moment you stop treating them as problems that demand immediate solutions, they begin to shift. Not because you have figured anything out, but because you have stopped the frantic pulling. You have brought a different kind of attention to them. This is where the practice becomes simple. And it is also where it becomes real. Find one confusion that is alive in you right now. Not a big philosophical question. Not something distant. Something you are actually carrying. Something that, when you think about it, creates a small tightness in your chest or a blur in your thinking. It might be something about a conversation you had. It might be uncertainty about a decision you need to make. It might be a feeling that you are not doing something right, though you cannot quite say what. Bring this confusion into awareness, not to solve it, not to think your way through it, just to look at it. Notice what happens in your mind when you hold it. Does the mind immediately start reaching for answers? Does it rehearse arguments? Does it try to convince you that you are wrong or right about something? Does it spin scenarios? Just notice. You are not stopping the mind from doing this. You are simply seeing it happen. This noticing itself is the practice. There is nothing else to do. As you sit with the confusion without pulling at it, something becomes visible. You begin to see the shape of your own thinking. You see how your mind moves. You see the patterns it falls into. And in that seeing, there is a kind of loosening. Not because the confusion has been resolved, but because you are no longer identified with the urgent need to resolve it. You are no longer the person frantically pulling the rope. You are the person holding the rope, watching it, letting it rest in your hands. The koan does not teach you to stop thinking. It teaches you to see thinking differently, to see that the thinking itself, the reaching, the grasping, the effort to make sense of something senseless, is the actual experience happening right now. And that experience is workable. It is not an obstacle to awareness. It is the very material of awareness. This is what ordinary mind means. Not a special state, not clarity or peace or certainty. Just this, your mind as it is, with all its confusion and reaching and uncertainty, and the capacity to be present with it without needing to change it. When you bring one real confusion into this kind of attention, something shifts. You begin to see your own thinking patterns as they actually move. You see how the mind creates tangles. You see how it perpetuates them. And in that seeing, the grip loosens, not because you have solved the koan, but because you have stopped expecting the koan to have a solution. You have stepped into the question itself. There is a question that has lived in Buddhist practice for centuries. It appears in many forms, but one of the most famous arrives as a koan. What is the sound of one hand clapping? On the surface, it seems like a riddle. A hand cannot clap alone. There is no sound. The question appears to have no answer, and that is precisely the point. But what we are really being asked to do is something quieter than solve a puzzle. We are being invited to sit with a kind of thinking that does not move toward resolution. We are being asked to dwell in uncertainty without the urgency to escape it. Most of our thinking is built on a very simple architecture. A question arises. We search for an answer. When we find it, we feel relief. The discomfort of not knowing dissolves. We move on. This is useful. It is how we navigate the world. But there is a deeper kind of not knowing that cannot be resolved this way. And when we meet it, something interesting happens. You might notice this in your own mind right now. There are things you do not understand about yourself. Why you react the way you do. Why certain people move you. What you actually want beneath what you think you want. These questions do not have clean answers waiting in a filing cabinet somewhere. They are not puzzles with solutions. They are more like fog you are standing in. When we stand in fog without rushing toward clarity, something shifts. The usual thinking machinery that hunts for answers begins to quiet. Not because we have solved anything, but because we have stopped trying to solve. We have turned our attention elsewhere. This is where the discomfort arrives. Because the mind does not like uncertainty. Uncertainty feels unstable. It feels like standing on ground that might give way. There is an impulse to move, to grasp, to find solid footing somewhere. That impulse itself is worth noticing. It is not a failure. It is simply what happens when the mind meets the unknown. The teaching that has survived in early Buddhist traditions speaks to this directly. The wise one dwells in uncertainty without distress, not without noticing the discomfort, not without feeling the pull toward resolution, but without the additional layer of resistance, without fighting the state itself. There is a difference between experiencing discomfort and being distressed by it. When you sit with a question that has no answer, what actually happens in your body. There is often a tightness somewhere, a contraction, a sense of incompleteness that the body wants to resolve. You might feel it in the chest, or the belly, or the back of the neck. The impulse is to move, to think harder, to find the answer and make the discomfort go away. But what if you stayed with that sensation instead? What if you let the discomfort be present, without treating it as a problem to solve? This is not the same as resignation or giving up. It is more like a shift in what you are doing with your attention. Instead of using your mind to hunt for answers, you are using your awareness to sense what is actually happening. You are noticing the texture of uncertainty as it lives in your body. You are observing the impulse to escape it without automatically following that impulse. When you stand in fog, you cannot see far. The usual landmarks disappear. You cannot navigate by sight alone, but you can still feel the ground beneath your feet. You can still sense the air on your skin. You can still hear. The fog does not remove all perception. It simply removes one kind of perception, and in that removal, other kinds of awareness can emerge. This is what happens when you rest in the body's response to not knowing. You stop trying to see through the fog and instead begin to sense what the fog itself is made of. The fog is not empty. It is full of texture and sensation and subtle movement. The koan works this way. It is not meant to be solved by the thinking mind. It is meant to exhaust the thinking mind until something else can emerge. When you have asked yourself the question 100 times, when you have tried every logical approach and found nothing, when you have sat with the discomfort long enough that it begins to feel almost ordinary, something shifts. The question does not disappear, but your relationship to it changes. You are no longer trying to escape the uncertainty. You are inhabiting it. And in that inhabiting, there is a kind of peace. Not the peace of having found an answer, but the peace of no longer needing one. The peace of standing in fog without the constant effort to see beyond it. The peace of letting your awareness rest in what is actually present, rather than in what you wish were present. This is not a destination you arrive at and then stay at permanently. It is more like a place you can return to, a way of being that becomes more familiar the more you practice it. The discomfort of uncertainty will still arise. The impulse to solve, to grasp, to find solid ground will still appear. But you will know from direct experience that it is possible to feel these things and not be driven by them. That you can stand in the fog and remain whole. Fun the sound of one hand. There is a question that has lived in Zen practice for centuries. It arrives without warning, often whispered by a teacher to a student who thought they were making progress. The sound of one hand clapping. And the question is not really a question at all. It is an interruption, a stone dropped into still water. Most of us approach such a thing with our thinking mind. We ask what it means. We search for a hidden meaning, a secret that lies beneath the words like a key buried in sand. We believe the koan is a puzzle to be solved, and that somewhere there is an answer that, once found, will unlock something. We sit with it. We worry it. We turn it over and over like a stone in our pocket, hoping that friction will eventually reveal its shape. But the teaching does not complete with an answer. This is the part that stops many people cold. The koan does not resolve into a clever reply or a profound statement. Instead, something shifts. The question itself begins to dissolve. And what remains is not a solution, but a different way of seeing altogether. Think of a wave that has spent its whole existence believing itself to be separate from the ocean. The wave rises and falls, distinct and individual, convinced of its own boundary. It asks questions about its nature. It seeks to understand itself through thinking. And then, at some moment, it stops asking. It simply returns. And in that return, there is no revelation of a secret. There is only the obvious discovery that it was never separate at all. The wave does not think its way back to the ocean. It stops thinking and realizes what was always true. This is closer to how a koan works. It is not a riddle with a punchline. It is a device that exhausts the thinking mind until thinking itself becomes irrelevant. And in that exhaustion, something opens. The sound of one hand. If you sit with this, your mind will generate answers. One hand against the thigh. One hand striking silence. The sound of the self meeting itself. Each answer feels like it might be the one. Each feels like progress. But notice what happens when you offer these answers to the koan. They do not land. They do not satisfy. And that failure is not a flaw in your thinking. It is the point. The koan is not asking you to think better. It is asking you to notice what happens when you stop trying to think your way to understanding. It is asking you to meet the Buddha, as the old teaching says, and simply walk with the Buddha. Not to become the Buddha, not to figure out what the Buddha knows. Just to walk alongside what is actually here, without needing to make sense of it first. There is a kind of freedom in this. When you release the need to solve the koan, something settles. The mind stops its urgent searching, and in that settling, you begin to notice what is present without the filter of questions. The breath moving, the body sitting, the sounds around you that do not need interpretation. This is not emptiness. It is not blankness. It is the world as it is, before your mind adds the layer of asking why. This is where equanimity enters. Equanimity is not indifference. It is not a kind of numb acceptance. It is a steady presence with what arises, without needing to push it away or pull it closer. When you stop asking the koan to give you something, you can be present with the koan itself. With the question as it sits in your awareness, unanswered and alive. A wave does not need to understand the ocean to return to it. It simply moves, and as it moves, the distinction between wave and ocean becomes less and less important. The boundary that seemed so solid begins to appear as a convenience, a temporary shape, something that was never as separate as it seemed. When you sit with the sound of one hand and notice what arises when you stop asking why, something becomes visible. You notice the asking itself. You notice the mind reaching for an answer, the discomfort of not having one, the small movements of resistance and grasping. You notice these things not as problems, but as the texture of what is happening right now. And in noticing them without judgment, without trying to fix them, they begin to loosen their grip on you. The practice is simple. It is not a technique to master. It is an invitation to notice what is here when the question stops being urgent. When you sit, let the koan be present without needing to solve it. Let your mind offer its answers if it will. Let them come and go. And underneath all of this, beneath the reaching and the seeking, notice the quiet presence that is here regardless. Notice the breath. Notice the body. Notice the space in which all of this is happening. This is not a path to enlightenment. It is not a way to become better at thinking. It is simply a way to rest in what is already true, to walk alongside what is here without needing to make it into something else. And as you do this, the koan begins to work on you in a way that no answer ever could. It teaches by undoing the need to be taught. It opens by closing the door to searching. The koan doesn't resolve. It doesn't hand you an answer you can carry away like a stone in your pocket. What it does is open a space where thinking meets its own edge, and something quieter begins. You might return to the same koan many times across years, the sound of one hand. Mu, the cypress tree in the garden. Each time you meet it differently. Not because the koan has changed, but because you have. The conditions that make up this moment of seeing are never quite the same. This is impermanence, not as loss, but as the way things actually breathe. When you sit with a koan and nothing happens, that too is the practice. When you sit with it and feel frustrated or bored or like you're doing it wrong, that is also what the koan is showing you. It's showing you the mind that wants to succeed, the mind that measures itself, the mind that believes there's a right way to be. And in seeing that, without judgment, something loosens. The koan isn't asking you to become someone else. It's not a test you pass to prove you're spiritual enough, or awake enough, or good enough. It's an invitation to see what's already here. The thinking, the silence, the breath, the sound of the room around you. All of it just as it is. And when you step away from the koan, when you go back to your ordinary life, the question it opened doesn't disappear. It walks with you, not as a burden, but as a kind of attention. You might be washing dishes and notice the way your hands move through water. You might be listening to someone speak and hear not just their words, but the space around them. You might be walking and feel the ground meet your foot again and again without needing to understand it. This is what the koan leaves behind, not an answer, but a way of being with what is. There's a tenderness in this. In returning to the same question, the same breath, the same simple awareness, without expecting it to be finished. The practice doesn't end. It doesn't arrive at a final point where you can say, I have understood, and now I am done. It continues, and that continuation is not a failure. It's the nature of a living practice. Each time you return, you're not starting over. You're meeting the path again with whatever you carry now. The koan holds you, not by giving answers, but by staying open. It doesn't close. It doesn't harden into doctrine. It remains a question, soft and spacious, and it lets you be exactly where you are. So if you've been listening to this and wondering whether you're doing it right, whether you understand enough, whether you've missed something, let that wondering be part of what you notice. Not something to fix, but something to see. The mind that questions, the mind that doubts, the mind that wants clarity, all of it is just more weather passing through awareness. You don't have to hold on to any of this. You don't have to remember every word or concept. What matters is the quality of attention you bring, and that attention doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be honest. If you'd like to continue sitting with these ideas, there are other reflections here that explore different corners of the same ground. Not because you need more information, but because sometimes hearing the same truth from a different angle lets it land more softly. But if this is where you stop for now, that's complete too. The koan will be there when you return. The breath will be there. The simple fact of being alive, aware, and present, that will be there, not demanding anything from you, just quietly available. Thank you for listening, for bringing your attention here, for sitting with what doesn't resolve, for letting the question remain open. May you meet each moment with gentleness. May you rest in not knowing, and may you find, again and again, the quiet that's always been here,